Have you ever felt that you love someone even though they hurt you, and yet you find yourself unable to stay away from them? Do you think this is love? If yes, then let me tell you a true story. A story that shook the United States and changed its law to this day. Bring something to drink, put a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And welcome to the Grow Library. Our story is about a couple, Francine and Mickey. Francine married Mickey in the 1960s, but Mickey was never a good life partner. He would hit her and then cry and tell her, "I'm sorry, it will never happen again." But it did happen again, and each time it was worse than the one before. Francine sought help from her mother, her family, and even the police. But it was all to no avail because, quite simply, American law at the time did not recognize such a thing as domestic violence. After 13 years of patience and pain, Francine lost control of herself. She burned down the house while her husband was sleeping and ended his life. But surprisingly, the court acquitted her due to temporary insanity. This was the first U.S. court case in which the term Battered Woman Syndrome was used. But what in the world is Battered Woman Syndrome? Well, it's a psychological and behavioral condition that a woman is exposed to by a somewhat oppressive husband, like being subjected to psychological, verbal, behavioral, physical, and sexual abuse. If we're talking about something scientific, it is classified as one of the psychological and behavioral conditions that fall under post-traumatic stress disorder. Of course, you know that a person who is subjected to abuse goes through several stages. The first thing is the tension in the marital relationship. The second thing is entering the rage phase by violence and beating. The last stage, let's call it the honeymoon phase, when he tries to appease her so that she can continue with him in this cycle of abuse. And by the way, it applies to both genders. Disagreements and arguing happen between any two individuals, but if you think that any simple disagreement with your partner is considered an abusive relationship, or a toxic relationship, or a red flag, then you've got to know what is the definition of an abusive relationship. Donald Dutton, the Canadian psychologist and physician, in his book, The Abusive Personality, defines an abusive relationship as a persistent pattern of psychological, emotional, or physical abuse resulting in deterioration of the mental and physical health of the affected individual. That means the harm here is based on two things. The first is that this abuse is continuous, regardless of its type, even if it is mockery or negative criticism or hurtful words. The second thing is that the victim is constantly deteriorating from bad to worse. Now the question is, what's the difference between normal disagreements and harmful disagreements? And when does a conflict turn from something normal into harmful behavior that can break you from the inside? Disagreements are the salt of the relationship. They lead to emotional maturity. You understand your partner with a fruitful dialogue that brings you closer to each other. That will carry purity, embrace. For the psychology of men is different than of women. Thus, by a rational, conscious dialogue, successful and a healthy marital relationship is what you achieve. However, in a toxic relationship, the complete opposite is happening. There is no dialogue. There is the abuser who dictates whatever is in their mind and is not listening. Why is he being violent? Because they want to control and dominate. A friend of mine who was a woman told me that whenever she would tell her husband about work she did, he would always mock her and belittle her. Not that he doesn't appreciate her work or doesn't say anything. He deliberately belittles her and marginalizes her. So, harmful emotional conflicts lead to a sterile dialogue and hurtful behavior and a recurring cycle of psychological harm. But mature emotional conflicts, on the contrary, lead to growth in the relationship.
Now you should have an idea about the difference between normal emotional conflict and harmful relationships. But what makes us attracted to harmful relationships? Imagine yourself in the following scenario. You are in a relationship with an abusive person whose goal is to put you in a cage, like a victim, and lock you away forever. This cage is in the basement. And to reach it, you have to go down 5 steps of the ladder with this abusive person. Each level is considered a new stage of toxicity. The first stage is the truth bias, in which there is a natural tendency to believe the other individual. This is the first stage that the abusive person will play on, as they will make you believe them in any way possible. Here we can say that you have entered the anesthesia stage. Especially since studies have shown that people, due to their weak ability to detect lies, will naturally tend to believe the other individual. This tendency to believe is much stronger in romantic relationships. The second stage is emotional attachment, which means unhealthy emotional attachment. This is where the action begins. This person will make you emotionally attached to them in a very excessive way. The attachment I mean here, my dear viewer, is that the toxic partner will put their life aside and make their lifestyle completely compatible with yours. They can even give up his hobbies, friends, family, and even his job. They would do anything impossible to keep you. You see how much a poor toxic person goes through?
Often, the person who falls into this behavior is someone who sees themselves as less than those around them. So any word of admiration and love that comes from the abusive person will make them go crazy and become more attached to them and see them as a flawless and perfect person. This is because, simply, the victim in this case sees that the fault lies with them, and the other toxic person is much better than them. It goes like, "Oh, I'm so grateful that you love me. I don't deserve this much goodness from you." You are, in this case, the dependent partner. You will always have hope that you will change your partner for the better. I'm sure you may have heard a girl say before, "I can fix him." Come on, girl. You work in a maintenance center or something? The third stage, trauma bonding. The person who is the aggressor is basically the one who assaults you, whether verbally or physically. They also sometimes give sweet words and treat you well during the abuse. So the poor victim remains unconsciously attached to this aggressor, whether being a parent or a partner. So really, how poor is it to live blindly in such circumstances?
The fourth stage is cognitive dissonance. Sorry, I've used too many scientific terms, but I will simplify them for you. Cognitive dissonance theory says that your mind will become tense when you live between two conflicting thoughts. Here, it will try to justify the situation in any way so that you can live comfortably. For example, imagine that a couple went on a first date. At first, of course, the young man will be very nice to her, but after a while, he will start to hurt her and belittle her. Here, the girl will start to get nervous. The girl here will live between two ideas. The first thought is that this person loves her and would never hurt her. But in reality, he actually hurt and wounded her. Here, her brain, in order to rest, starts to justify the situation. Maybe he was very stressed from work, so he treated me this way. Or maybe I provoked him, or I did something wrong. And the result? The girl begins to accept the abuse and sees it as a form of expression of love. Not because this is reality, but just because her mind is trying to get rid of this conflict so that it can rest. I don't want to bully you, my dear viewer, but if he or she hurts you and then tells you that they love you and repeat the same thing every single time, then you might be a clown. I'm sorry, this topic actually made me angry. Anyway, the fifth stage, which is the learned helplessness. At this stage, the victim says to themselves, okay, I know there are millions of people better than the person I'm with, but I don't have the energy to even start from scratch and get to know a new person and ask them about their favorite color and their favorite food and what we have in common and whatnot. Here, the victim has fallen into the trap of learned helplessness because he has tried more than once to get out of this abusive relationship, but it always ends the same way: a blame or threat from the toxic person. Believe me, if you were the victim in this situation, and I wouldn't wish this situation on you at all, the toxic person will always repeat to you that he is the only one who loves you in this life, and no one will love you as they loved you, and all that crap. And will continue to blame you for ruining that relationship every single time and shake your self-confidence until you say to yourself, I don't deserve to be in a better relationship. You'll get attached more to that toxic person.
There are people who got involved in a marriage, and after they become deeply involved, they discover that they were in an abusive relationship. So they try to take action and get out of it, as the story of Francine that I mentioned earlier. But why does a person who recognizes such a relationship, rejects harmful behaviors, and has not reached the stage of learned helplessness find breaking the relationship up so difficult? There are many reasons, actually. The most dangerous of them is the fear of the partner's reaction, such as fear of threats or revenge, or even physical harm, especially if the partner is violent or psychopathic. In a study of 485 survivors of domestic violence, 22% said they preferred to stay in the abusive relationship simply because they felt safer knowing their abusive partner's movements. The second reason is financial dependence. Many couples you see have one partner depending on the other financially. Another reason might be social pressures. As you may hear people say to you, you'll never find someone like her, or you are not a person suitable for relationships. Don't listen to anyone, because you know your own situation better than anyone else. Take your decisions rationally, or you may regret them later. How can a person reach a point where they lose their sense of value within a relationship? Listen, love means purity. It means respect. It means appreciation. It was never about hurting. Start by respecting yourself. Look good at yourself. You have achievements. You have certain ambitions. You have a meaning. Now, how to get out of an abusive or toxic relationship? Well, just as entering such a relationship goes through stages, getting out of it also goes through stages. The first step is to admit to yourself that you are being affected by this relationship, and that you, as a person, as a breathing human being, deserve better. Second is to seek psychological support, whether from your family, friends, the good friends, obviously, specialists, or even centers. The aim is to protect you from yourself if you ever think to go back to such a relationship. The last step is that you expect to experience withdrawal symptoms. This might be strange, but an abusive relationship causes addiction, just like drugs do. It's like a chemical connection that affects your brain and emotions. I mean, you'll experience false nostalgia and regret. Just block them in every social media account, block them in life, take them off your brain. After this stage, you'll start the building stage. You'll reclaim your strength and identity and rebuild yourself, stronger, smarter, and more mature. Better yet, seek a psychological counselor to help you. In the end, my dear, broken-hearted viewer, prevention is better than cure. Not getting into an abusive relationship in the first place is much better than the agony and the pain of getting out of it. Well, after everything you have heard, I know you may ask, how to avoid such relationships? Well, Another episode on that might be coming. But if you had any experience, share them in the comments so we all learn from each other. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't, and thank you for your time.